putting on this event and with the Marine Wildlife, or I'm so sorry, the Morro National Estuary Program and the Marine Mammal Center. We're going to be talking about all things wildlife, waterways, and waste, which is so exciting. And I think it's a great way to wrap up the Creeks to Coast cleanup event. If you do have any questions throughout the event, please put them in the chat and we will get to them after all the presentations have been done, so we can get any questions that you have answered as well as we can. Okay, so I just wanted to kind of go over the Creeks to Coast cleanup really quickly and all of the data that we compiled throughout the last 2 weeks. So we had a really successful event. We picked up over 4,000 pounds of trash and recyclables, over 24,000 items, and there was over 250 cleanups throughout SLO County, which is really amazing. We had over 500 volunteers participate in this event this year, and we are so excited that people were able to come out and still clean up our wonderful area and kind of beautify it a little bit more, even though it already is so beautiful. The top 3 items, which are usually in the top 10 of items this year, were cigarette butts, food wrappers, and construction materials. And I think it's just so cool to kind of look at the data and kind of have a visual for what everyone did these last 2 weeks. And it kind of shows our success. So on to tonight's topic. Tonight we'll be speaking about the importance of waterways, estuaries, and wildlife, and also waste and how all of those things kind of interweave into each other and affect each other and are all really important topics and ideas within the environmental realm. Our speakers are Rachel Pass of the Morro Bay National Estuary Program and Shayla Zink with the Marine Mammal Center, and they will be enlightening us on these important topics. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it off to Rachel, who's going to talk to us about estuaries and waterways.
All right, welcome everybody. Thank you so much, Jamie, for that introduction. I'm really excited to be here. I'm going to go ahead and try and share my screen here. Okay, so hopefully that will come online. Okay, great. All right, so tonight, as you heard, we'll be talking about wildlife and waterways and waste, and I'll be sort of doing the introduction to the waterways portion and talking a little bit about waste and how it enters some of those waterways. So I first will share a little bit about the Morro Bay National Estuary Program, who I work with and for. If I can get my PowerPoint to, there we go. Okay, I just got too excited about the buttons. All right, so we are a nonprofit organization over at the Morro Bay National Estuary Program. Sometimes with the word national in our name there, people think that we're part of a government organization, but we aren't. We're one of 28 national estuary programs across the country, and those are designated through the Clean Water Act, and we get basically a grant to do work through the EPA. It's pretty cool too that Morro Bay is one of those 28 national estuary programs, because the others in California are Santa Monica Bay and San Francisco Bay. So we think it's pretty cool that our little tiny Morro Bay is thought of as important as San Francisco Bay and Santa Monica Bay, those really giant estuaries to the north and south of us. So we work collaboratively with other organizations like ECOSLO and the Marine Mammal Center and a lot of other great environmental and other agencies to protect and restore the Morro Bay estuary. And we do that through 3 different branches of our program: restoration and conservation work, which involves actual boots on the ground, people digging, repairing habitats and things to how they were before people kind of intervened. The part of the program that I get to work in the most is outreach and education. So doing events like this where we get to chat with folks about the bay and how to help keep it healthy. And then we have a really long-standing monitoring and research part of the program that does a lot of water quality collection and monitoring, water quality data collection and monitoring that supports both the restoration and conservation decisions that we make and the outreach and education information that I'm able to share with you. So today we'll be looking at quite a bit of that data. And oops, I promise I will figure out how to work PowerPoint quickly. All right, so we work at the Estuary program in a very defined area. This little kind of blue, dark blue outline is where we work, and it's called the Morro Bay watershed. So what is a watershed? A watershed is an area of land where every drop basically of precipitation or anything else that hits the land drains to the same place. So everywhere, everyone, no matter where you live, lives in a watershed. And we can think of those on a really small scale, like, you know, our water, like near my house here, drains into a specific storm drain and then out into the bay because I happen to live in Los Osos. But on a very large scale, all of us on the western half of the United States live in a watershed that drains to the Pacific Ocean. So no matter where we live, we're in a watershed. We're in actually multiple watersheds. And it's really just a way of thinking about where the water that hits the ground goes. And any pollution and anything like trash, microplastics, anything that might end up on the ground and get washed away with that water can end up in those water bodies as well. So you can kind of see how that might happen. You know, if rain hits the ground, it's going to go into these little tributaries or storm drains and then end up washing out into a creek or a river, out into eventually out into the ocean. So at a very basic level, this happens because of gravity, right? So if you want to think about it like this, you can think about a watershed as like a bowl, and every one of those little drops of water or snow or whatever type of precipitation you want to imagine kind of hitting the ground and getting pulled downhill like a beach ball or something would by gravity. So that's how a watershed works. So the other word in our name, what is an estuary? An estuary is a fancy way of saying a place where saltwater and freshwater mix. So the Morro Bay estuary is one of those places. It's right here inside the sand spit in Morro Bay. Can you see? You can see my cursor, right? Okay, cool. So it's this area where the two creeks, Los Osos Creek and Chorro Creek, run down from the hills and mix with the salt water that's coming into the bay from the ocean. So the estuary is influenced by tides. It's got a lot going on. This is a picture, kind of a cool picture of the estuary from the outside. You can see the harbor mouth here. You might have gone in or out on a boat there. This is the sand spit. A lot of people ask, is the sand spit natural? It is, absolutely. That's a natural feature. Nobody built that. What is not so natural in our estuary is this causeway here, which was built finally in the 30s. So that's another topic. And then this is a look at where Los Osos Creek and Chorro Creek, the two freshwater streams, come down and meet that estuary body of water. So that's kind of generally what our watershed looks like here. And just a couple of quick facts. The watershed area, that's this whole area in the blue outline, is about 75 square miles. I believe that's about 1.5 times the size of New Orleans, if that's helpful for anyone. And then the bay itself is about 3.6 square miles. So much smaller again than the San Francisco Bay estuary or the Santa Monica Bay estuary, but still very important. Lots and lots of biodiversity here. We'll talk more about that. And it's also very well preserved, which is part of why we have such great biodiversity, such a great range of wildlife here. All right, so this is the part of the presentation where I'll be sharing some of our data with you. And this data kind of will help paint a picture of the overall health of the estuary and watershed. So whatever lands in the watershed, as we talked about, whether that's a drop of rain or a drop of a pollutant or a piece of trash, has the potential to end up in the bay or the creeks. And so the water that we're monitoring, whether we're going out into the creeks, uphill, you know, on land that's owned by Cal Poly, maybe some of the ranch land there, or by private landowners or by anyone really, anything that's happening up in those creeks has the power to affect the quality of the water in the bay itself. So one of the main things that we look at is the health of that water, and we test it for bacteria. So bacteria and pathogens. So pathogens, well, bacteria is a type of pathogen, but basically we're looking for things that can make people sick. What just happened? So the main thing that we test for is called Enterococcus, and it's what's called an indicator bacteria, or something that can tell us whether or not fecal matter, so feces, has been present in the bay. So you'll see the time frame of this data is from 2005 to 2018. That is our most recent data set. We're always collecting data, but it takes a long time to process and put together. So that's our most recent State of the Bay report, which we put out in 2020, has data up through 2018. So some of the sources, and we'll look at that specific data in a minute, but some of the sources of bacteria in a watershed are what you're seeing here on the screen. So some might come from human sources, so septic systems specifically in our watershed. Now, most people, pretty much everyone really has hooked up to the sewer at this point, which is great. But there are still some old septic systems out there that could potentially have some bacteria in them. We also have stormwater runoff that can contain feces from dogs, for example, or cats or other animals. And then there's also some bacteria from totally natural wild sources. So some of our adorable marine mammals, seals, sea otters, but that's expected and that's part of the ecosystem. So we're not so much concerned about that. But those are some of the sources where bacteria can come from. And we test for it by collecting samples, which looks like this. You've got basically a cup on a pole. You take it back to a lab and do some lab work and figure out if it has Enterococcus. It's kind of cool. It actually glows. The water ends up glowing. It's fun to see, even if you don't want to actually see the Enterococcus there. And what we found is good overall. So the bacteria sites that we test at are shown here in the little dots, and they are all, for the most part, at good or very good levels. That means low levels of bacteria, which is wonderful. And it means that the water is largely safe for swimming in. However, even with that said, you want to stay out of the water for about 72 hours following a storm, because there is a lot of gunk, bacteria and other things that gets washed down the creeks and the storm drains in a storm. And it's just better to not expose yourself to that and stay out of that for about 3 days after a storm. One of the things that we do is try to keep dog poop, I'm going to just go ahead and say dog poop, out of the bay by running the Mutts for the Bay program. So that's a program that is funded largely by community members. So thank you everyone for supporting that. And it helps pick up dog poop. Dogs produce an average of 3.5 pounds of poop per week, like your average dog. And there's something like 19,000 dogs in Morro Bay and Los Osos. So if you add that up, that's a lot of dog poop. And dog poop has twice the amount of bacteria, or the bacterial load, if you want to sound more scientific about it, as human waste. So it's really important to pick up that poop and put it in the trash can. And that definitely helps not only the water stay healthy for us, but for the wild animals that have no choice but to live and look for food in that water. So another thing that we look at to determine the health of the bay is eelgrass. I always want to ask, how many people know what eelgrass is? But you can just, think about it yourself. So eelgrass looks like this. It grows on the bottom of the bay. Some of it grows subtidally. That means you won't see it unless you're like sticking your head under the water. Some of it, most of it actually grows intertidally, which means it's sometimes exposed if the tide is out and sometimes under the water if the tide is in. But it is a really valuable habitat. Lots of fish, juvenile fish that then go out into the ocean and become commercially fished species live there. And it is just very important to the overall health of the bay. Unfortunately, we lost about 96% of it between 2007 and 2012. So that's something we've been working on really closely since then, both studying that loss and trying to bring it back. So one of the things we do is we go out on paddleboards and on foot, try to find where the eelgrass is, map it, monitor its growth. We test for density, because the denser the beds are, the healthier it is. Kind of looks like a meadow underwater, except it waves in the water instead of the wind. It's really, really beautiful when the water's up. And when we're out there, we get to see how important it is to the wildlife. So largely, you'll find small things like navinax, which is that kind of sluggy thing in the upper left-hand corner. You'll also see some larger species like two-spot octopus and horn sharks. Sometimes they, if they get stuck in a low depth of water, they're going to be really happy if they're in eelgrass, happier anyway, because they can still stay kind of cool and get some water going through their gills. This guy, this horn shark, did get helped back into the deeper water. But you can see that they're in there, they're hunting, they're fishing, they're hiding from predators, and living their best wildlife life. So the eelgrass, this is a map, a series of maps that shows the decline of the eelgrass from 2007 through 2013, and then very faintly, some of the eelgrass starting to come back. So I don't have the latest maps. They are in like the final week of being put together, but we actually have data that shows we were down to 13 acres in the bay from a high of about 320. And we believe we're back up past 100 acres now, just over the past few years. So that's super exciting. And that's an indicator too of good water quality in the bay. So again, that means less pollutants, less bacteria, generally less waste in our waterways. So we've been working really hard at restoration, and this is kind of how that looks. We collect eelgrass from healthy beds in the bay and transplant it with permits and things in a solid plan to parts of the bay where we think it's going to do really well. And then we continue to track it. So on the right here, you can see 4 plots that have grown, each of them more than 400% over the course of a year since their transplant there. So that's the same plots on the left and the right from 2019 to 2020. So that's been really exciting to see. You can see that the person on the left was very excited just to plant them, but you should have seen our faces when we saw how much they'd grown. We were like, woohoo! So that's pretty cool. Another thing that we do to track water health is go out into the creeks in the spring and actually look at the bugs that are there. So believe it or not, the types of bugs that are there can tell you how clean the water is. So this little guy here on the right is a stonefly. It is really only tolerant of clean water. They can't live where there's pollution in the water or where the water is too warm. So when we find them, we know that that stretch of creek is pretty healthy. If we find other bugs that are more tolerant of pollution, but no stoneflies or caddisflies or some of the other bugs that only survive in clean water, we know that we might need to do something to address the water quality in that part of the creek. So that might mean we need to do a restoration project, add some more plants back to the creek, or maybe do a fencing project to try and keep cattle out so that to bring the bacterial input down. It really depends. But it's an indicator that we need to go check it out. This is a map that shows creek health in our watershed, and you can see that by and large, it's really good. So we're in the very good range in most of the tributaries, and that water quality does reduce a little bit into the fair and poor sections in the mainstream of Choro Creek. And that largely during this period had to do with a lack of water because of drought. So that is also a problem here in California currently. Whoops. All right. So some of the things we do to try and improve creek health are we work on removing barriers to water passage and fish passage. So this is on the left in really old, something that was supposed to actually be a fish ladder to help fish get up through the creek. And it had kind of broken down over the years and become a barrier to fish passage. So we helped remove that. And what you can see on the right now is a much more natural looking structure that actually does help fish get up the creek during lower water times. Oops, I'm actually going to, whoops, sorry. So another thing, I don't want to take up too much time, so I'll go through this part quickly, but another thing that we do have our eye on is climate change. So this is something that affects, obviously many things, but it does affect the flow of water and the inputs that are getting into the water in terms of bacteria and pollutants, because it is predicted to increase the level of the storms. So we're expecting to receive fewer rain events, but have those rain events be harsher and bring more precipitation. And so with that, you end up with a higher risk of flooding, which usually means things that aren't supposed to be in the water getting in the water, as well as scouring out creek banks and bringing more sediment into the bay. Which can be problematic for quite a few reasons. I'm sorry, I'm having problems here. Okay, so I'm actually gonna, because of time, I'm gonna switch through that. But you can look more into climate change data online. Our CoStar Future is a really great website where you can see really specific data for the entirety of the California coast. So I would recommend checking that out. And this just shows some predictions of what it might look like in our bay, in our watershed here, with sea level rise of different heights. So I believe this is with 3 feet of sea level rise. So we might expect to see an island form at the end of the sand spit. A lot of the sand spit get inundated, which again would change the health of the bay kind of as a whole, and habitat for wildlife, which you'll be hearing a little bit more. You'll be hearing a lot more about the wildlife in the bay in just a minute. So things that you can do to help protect the bay are reduce the bacteria out there by picking up after your pet, making sure that you aren't putting anything down the storm drain. So that means like washing your car at a car wash where the water is actually recycled, changing the oil at a mechanic, or in a very safe way at home, and overall just doing your best to reduce your carbon footprint. All of those things will help protect the health of the waterways here and then the wildlife that depend on them. So if you want to keep in touch with us, you can subscribe to our blog. And keep in touch with ECOSLO, because they, have all the wonderful tips for how to take care of our habitats and, the health of the Central Coast as a whole. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Rachel. That was wonderful. Shayla, if you want to go ahead and tell us a little bit more about wildlife, that'd be wonderful.
Yes, so we're definitely going to build on those concepts of climate change and get into how that affects our marine mammal populations and how it all ties together. So give me just a sec. All right, can everyone see the great? So I'm Shayla Zink. I am the operations coordinator at the Marine Mammal Center's San Luis Obispo office. And tonight we'll be going through a couple patient stories and how you can help out those patients, and what to do if you see a marine mammal that's in distress. So the Marine Mammal Center is the world's largest marine mammal hospital. Our mission is to advance global ocean conservation through marine mammal rescue, rehabilitation, research, release, and education. We're a nonprofit established in 1975 with around 100 staff members and close to 1,300 volunteers. Pictured to the left is our Sausalito headquarters, but we rescue sick and injured marine mammals along 600 miles of California coast, from Mendocino to San Luis Obispo counties, and we even have a hospital out in Hawaii working with the endangered Hawaiian monk seals. Pictured to the right is our San Luis Obispo site, which is here in Morro Bay, and that's my home base. And our local site allows us to dispatch our rescue teams for faster responses and stabilize patients before they are transported to our headquarters, where they are cared for by our veterinarians and eventually released healthy and happy back into the wild. Every rescue starts with a phone call to our hotline, which is 415-289-SEAL. And we send out our trained volunteers to respond, where animals are then brought to our hospital, where we can do anything a human hospital can, but for marine mammals. And then our research helps us understand why and how animals get sick or injured and how we can innovate marine mammal medicine to advance global ocean conservation. And then, of course, down here on the bottom right corner, our ultimate goal is to release these animals back into the wild, healthy and happy and chunky, like these little harbor seals. And while our hospital up in Sausalito is normally open to the public to visit, it is currently closed due to construction. But in the meantime, you can check out our website for online learning materials, look at current patients, look up research papers, or to sign up for our newsletter for updates about reopening and our patients. Like I said earlier, we have been rescuing marine mammals since 1975. And this graph shows the number of animals we've rescued each year. You can see that every year is different, especially this year and last year due to the pandemic, but there is a clear general trend. There are spikes during certain years like 2015 and years with less admits like 2020. But in general, we are seeing an increase in the number of animals we admit to the hospital. This could be due to three main reasons. First, it could be that there are more animals out there due to population increase. That would be a great thing. It could be that there are more people reporting sick and injured marine mammals to us. Also great. Sadly, it could also be that there are more animals in need of rescue. Regardless, it's clear that marine mammals are in need of help. And through our work of rescue and rehabilitation, we're better understanding the trends and reasons why marine mammals need rescue. So in San Luis Obispo County, we tend to see 5 common species. And most of them you can see pretty commonly inside of Morro Bay. We have California sea lions, northern elephant seals, which tend to hang out more towards San Simeon, harbor seals, fur seals, and of course, sea otters. These patients are typically young pups when they come in, and they've been separated from their mothers prematurely and or are malnourished. But luckily, when they come to the center, they get a second chance at life. And by teaching them how to hunt and eat and getting them up to a healthy weight, we can eventually release them back into the ocean. We also respond to other animals like whales and dolphins. And next, I have a video showing animals we successfully rescued in SLO County last year in 2020. Just as a quick correction, the number of sea otters in the video should be 11 and not 40. We had a typo there. So today I'll be talking about 3 patient stories of animals that were rescued in SLO County. We have Gina, the California sea lion, Ellsworth, the northern elephant seal, and Lentil, the Guadalupe fur seal. Gina was an adult female California sea lion rescued from Morro Rock Beach after being monitored for abnormal behavior over the course of 4 days. When rescued, she appeared a bit lethargic, underweight, and was exhibiting just generally strange behaviors for a sea lion. And you can see her on the beach before rescue in the top right there. Once she got on site to our hospital and our veterinarians examined her, it was determined she was suffering from domoic acid toxicosis, which is a condition that causes lethargy, disorientation, seizures, and with chronic exposure, brain damage. But thankfully, depending on the severity, this is a treatable toxin that we can flush out of the sea lion system and with fluids, as well as provide anti-seizure medicines if they have seizures. And after only 3 weeks in care, Gina was toxin-free and able to be released back into her ocean home. But a little more about domoic acid. It is a toxin that we see affecting many of our patients at the center, and it is something that can affect people as well. The toxin is produced by an algae that can build up in the food chain, and fish and filter-feeding marine animals like crabs and clams can accidentally eat that toxin and then be eaten by our marine mammals or people. And that process is called bioaccumulation, and it's shown in this little graphic. The Marine Mammal Center was the first to document this in marine mammals back in 1998. And they notified public health officials to close down fisheries so that people wouldn't get sick from the same toxin. And in people, it's known as amnesiac shellfish poisoning, which is something you may have heard of. But since then, more organizations have been established to test and monitor toxin levels to protect public health. There are 2 factors that can affect that can cause algae blooms that produce domoic acid. First is warming waters of climate change. So when we burn fossil fuels like coal, oil, and natural gas, carbon dioxide is released into the atmosphere, and it acts like a heat-trapping blanket, warming the land, air, and sea. Warmer waters mean an increased likelihood in harmful algae blooms. Additionally, fertilizer runoff through our watersheds can exacerbate these harmful algal blooms, and this map shows domoic acid concentrations along the California coast, with high concentrations colored in red and lower in yellow and green. And as you can see, the highest concentrations are in those near shore waters where our seals and sea lions spend most of their time. And unfortunately, unlike for humans, we can't stop the marine mammals from eating the fish that's infected. So it's very important to work on ways of preventing things like warming waters at the source by reducing our fossil fuels. We'll take a moment now to view this video, which explains how domoic acid can affect sea lions.
Like cows eat grass, fish eat plankton. Sometimes, plankton produces something called domoic acid. It is toxic in large amounts. When fish eat the toxic plankton, they become poisoned by the domoic acid. Sea lions eat upwards of 100 fish a day.
Whoa, I can't even eat that many pizza rolls.
When sea lions eat a lot of fish poisoned by domoic acid, it causes them to get really sick. The domoic acid will attack the sea lion's heart, weakening the heartbeat. It will also attack the brain. In serious cases, the domoic acid even causes part of a sea lion's brain to shrink. This causes the sea lion to act dizzy and disoriented.
Smile.
No! It's important you call the Marine Mammal Center.
Hello, the Marine Mammal Center.
Yes, we found a sick sea lion on the beach.
Okay, a rescue team is being dispatched. Keep everyone away from the animal.
Kyle, sea lions are wild animals. They can bite.
Huh?
So there's a peek at some of what my day-to-day life is like. I hope that was helpful and cute. I love that video. Moving on to our next patient. So another one of our common animals that we see is the northern elephant seal. And they're also being affected by climate change. As Rachel was saying, our storms are getting stronger. So those big, strong storm surges have a big effect on the northern elephant seals during their nursing time. And so you may have seen them along the slow coast because they're very common. And we have a breeding rookery in San Simeon. And Ellsworth here was one of the many elephant seal pups we took care of this year. She was found weighing 66 pounds, and a weaned pup should weigh close to 300 pounds. And at 1 month old, Ellsworth was even under the average birth weight for an elephant seal. So when pups like Ellsworth are separated from their mom too early, this can have a big effect on their chance of survival. The nursing period is critical as they only have 28 days to gain hundreds of pounds. So once their mom leaves, they're on their own to figure out how to swim, dive, hunt, and they rely on fat stored during that nursing time to sustain them for a few months while they kind of figure things out. Additionally, Ellsworth was reported at Oceano Dunes on the drive-on beach, so she was at risk of being hit by a vehicle. Thankfully, we have a close partnership with the California State Parks, and the rangers were able to rescue her and quickly remove her from the hazardous beach. Then our responders recovered Ellsworth and brought her back to our San Luis Obispo field site. After 3 months of care, being fed high-fat fish milkshakes, and then going to fish school, where we teach our patients, not our parents, how to eat whole fish, Ellsworth gained 73 pounds and was released back into the wild in San Simeon. For patients like Ellsworth who are being affected by changing ocean conditions, we can combat climate change every day by reducing fossil fuel emissions, using solar power, walking or biking instead of driving, driving electric vehicles, and shopping for locally grown produce. Did you know that livestock production accounts for 15% of heat trapping gas emissions? So we can help alleviate this issue by participating in movements like Meatless Monday, or as I like to strive for, Meatless Most Days. And so our last patient is Lentil, who is a Guadalupe fur seal, which is a threatened species under the Endangered Species Act. Lentil was reported in Avila Beach, entangled in a fishing net. Our trained responders were able to go out with the Avila Beach Harbor Patrol and rescue him from the water, then bring him back to our San Luis Obispo field site, where we removed the net that was encircling his body. Fortunately, Lentil was found before it was too late, and we were able to rescue, disentangle, and treat him. Without the removal of the net, this entanglement would have been life-threatening. Lentil was underweight when he arrived at our hospital. The drag from the net encircling his chest, slowing him down, likely impeding his ability to hunt for food. But he gained 21 pounds in care before being determined fit for release. And you can see him exiting his carrier back into the water, the ocean, in that photo on the bottom right. But we can help prevent entanglements like lentils by eating sustainably caught and local seafood. This can help ensure that there is food available for all species who rely on the ocean for food, as well as avoid entanglement through safer fishing practices. Look for labels like these on the top here to indicate that fish have been sustainably caught or responsibly farmed. And localcatch.org, which you can see the logo in the middle there, is a great resource to look up sustainable seafood being caught and sold locally. Another way to prevent marine mammals from getting entangled in ocean trash is to reduce our use of single-use plastics. So carrying a reusable water bottle or reusable cutlery are great, easy changes you can make, but participating in cleanups like Creeks to Coast is another great way to help marine mammals and the whole earth. But all of you, make our work possible. Every patient starts with a call to our hotline. If you see a marine mammal that might be in distress, please keep your distance, leash your dogs, and do not interact with the animal. If safe to do so, take a photo and note the location as precise as you can, and then call our hotline, and a team of trained responders will be dispatched to assess the animal and perform a rescue if necessary. Thank you for everything you do to make our oceans safer for marine mammals. I'll turn it back to Jamie now, but if there are additional questions after, you can email me or go to our website for more information.
Right. Well, thank you so much to our speakers. I think we were all able to learn a lot. I know I did. And if anyone has any questions for either Rachel or Shayla, you can put them in the chat right now and we will answer them.
I saw a question come in from Anne about native steelhead in Morro Bay. And the answer is yes, there are native steelhead in the Morro Bay watershed. That is another thing that we do keep an eye on. The estuary program and a range of other local organizations. So there's actually a group called the Watershed Stewards Program, which is like AmeriCorps, and they have folks who actually go out and track reds, or a red is a nest basically for steelhead. in a creek. And so, yeah, there are definitely native steelhead that are in the creeks that lead out to Morro Bay. And so you might see them there. And it's pretty exciting. So that's definitely one of the reasons that we want to keep the water clean and healthy and improve the sections where we do find lower oxygen levels or water that's too hot, because steelhead are pretty special in that they use the entire creek, the estuary, and then the ocean at large, at all different stages of their life cycle, because they'll go out to sea, feed for a couple of years, and then come back into spawn. And they can do that 4 or 5 times in a lifetime, as opposed to, I don't know if anyone else here is from the Pacific Northwest, but I was used to salmon, which do that once and die, which is cool enough, but steelhead can do that 5 times if the water is clean enough to let them. So yeah. That's my long answer about native steelhead.
It looks like we had another question that says, is the algae that causes domoic poisoning also cause red tide?
Right. So there are a lot of different types of algae blooms. You may have noticed a couple weeks or a month ago the really huge red tide we saw, that you could look out at the ocean water and it was just brown. And that was not an algae bloom where we saw an increase in domoic acid. And so there are a bunch of different types of algae blooms, and my understanding is that the algae bloom that causes domoic acid toxicity is not usually associated with a visible algae bloom.
This is actually not something that we typically deal with, but we had gotten a lot of questions about it, the red tide, and so we ended up writing a blog that has to do with it. So I'll share the link right there.
Awesome.
in the chat for folks.
Yeah, it was huge.
Yeah.
All right, so if no one has any more questions, I think we're going to wrap up. Thank you again to Rachel and Shayla for your wonderful presentations. I think, like I said, we all learned a lot. And also thank you to Lauren, who's my coworker, who is on the back end of things, who is helping answer your questions and writing them down and things like that. So thank you, Lauren. And just so you all know, if you would like to support this Eco Talk or future Eco Talks, you can donate to ECOSLO. The link is on the slide that's being shared right now. And you can also find us on social media at Instagram and Facebook. And I assume you can find the Morro Bay National Estuary Program and the Marine Mammal Center on those social media sites as well. So thank you all, and I hope you have a good rest of your night.
Thank you. Thanks for having us, and thanks for being here, everybody.
Thank you so much, everyone. And thank you, EcoSlow, for having us.
Yes, of course. Thank you both for being here. You go ahead and stop recording.